In my experience, the most overlooked and misunderstood digital communication platform that churches use is email. That's right, not Instagram, not Facebook, email. So in this episode, you'll learn everything you need to know about crafting an email strategy at your church that works and spurs on more next steps and life change across your entire church.
Well, hey there, and welcome to Pro Church Tools, the show to help you share the message of Jesus while we navigate the biggest communication shift in 500 years. I'm your host, Alex Mills, joined as always by Brady Shearer.
In our most recent episode, Alex, we talked about the great decline of Instagram in 2019 and how we're exiting the golden age of Instagram and platforms hit a bit of maturity, but that's okay. What it does emphasize to me, though, is the importance for churches to have an entity that belongs to them, that is completely theirs. Instagram, you've got to think about it like rented space, whereas your email list, that's an entity that belongs to you. You can move the contacts in your email list from one platform to another. Let's say you were using a platform like MailChimp, which is one that we recommend, but MailChimp did this terrible thing and restricted you in ways that were not becoming of an email platform. You could take your email contacts and move to ConvertKit, which is another platform that we recommend. And in that way, you own the audience in ways that your social platform does not. It's not like you can export your Facebook likes to import into YouTube.
Yeah. I think about this all the time. So I have an audience on Instagram of about 4,000 people, and I actively engage with this audience every day. I love it. But I've been thinking about this a lot for the last year or so, thinking, okay, if for some reason Instagram just got swept out from underneath me, my account was closed, Instagram, the factory blew up wherever they make Instagram, whatever.
Dark.
I would never be able to speak to these people ever again.
It's true.
Now, that's a little bit unique compared to churches because a lot of the people who follow you online probably come to your church service on Sunday, so you can speak to them there. But most churches' online following is about 2, 3, sometimes 4 times bigger than their actual congregation.
It's not uncommon for it to be 10 times bigger.
Yeah, and I think we're as churches start to figure out how to use social better as a ministry, I think we're going to see those audiences grow even more. People are going to be getting value from your church online from a distance that they'll never come and visit you on a Sunday. But I've been asking myself, if I could never speak to these people again, I talk about coffee on my Instagram. How could I ever teach them how to brew better coffee? I sell shirts now. How could I ever sell another shirt if I can't talk to these people? So for the last 6 or so months, I've been working really hard on building my email list. Is that sexy? No. Email kind of sucks. It's kind of boring, but I know that if the Instagram server was to get sabotaged by Nick Cage, he goes in there with some wire snippers, cuts it all, it's over.
Even Liam Neeson couldn't stop him.
No, I can talk to the people on my email list because I own that list.
And you might hear us talking about email as if it's a social platform. And that's the way that I have always viewed social. But I don't think churches view it this way because I did a quick search within a couple of Facebook groups. I wanted to see what questions do churches have about their email marketing. First of all, that term email marketing does not get used. The term that gets used is email newsletter. It's the church newsletter. Most churches and church leaders view their email list as just a way to blast their congregation with information about upcoming events and promotions and announcements. This is not the way that you should use your email list whatsoever, just like you shouldn't use Instagram or Facebook that way. With Facebook, Instagram, and every social platform, email included, we talk about the 1 in 5 rule, and that is that no more than 20% of your published posts, email campaigns that you send out, no more than 1 in 5 should be promotional in nature. They should be offering value and inviting people to take next steps and live within ministry and community using these platforms. They don't simply exist to promote things that are happening.
Right.
They exist to be the thing that is happening. And so we want to take this episode and give you a ton of ideas for how to use your email marketing. We're not going to call it an email newsletter because it can and should be so much more than that. The first 3 things that we want to talk about are actual content that you can include in your email. And each of these 3 ideas has to do with amplifying the best content that you're currently producing. Let's take a moment And just remember that we as churches have a tremendous advantage here because our organizations are built upon the foundation of creating new content every single week.
And not a small piece of content, a big one.
Dental professionals are jealous. Real estate agents wish they could be us. Doctors hate us, but we are awesome because we are creating new content every single week. And so similarly, what we want to do with email is deliver content, but we always recommend that you deliver only the best content through email. So this is what we do at Pro Church Tools. We create a lot of content, and we have this kind of system where we're using different platforms as testing grounds, seeing what Pro Church Nation responds to, what Pro Church Nation likes, and then if something responds positively, we'll then elevate it to the next level. So we'll use social as this testing ground because, Instagram stories expire in 24 hours and a tweet will just disappear into the ether not too long after it's published. If people respond positively to a social post, we'll then maybe elevate that and create an episode of it. And the best episodes get amplified, elevated, and sent through our email newsletter. So, oh my gosh, I called it a newsletter. I apologize.
You've been conditioned.
Yeah, we should just turn off the episode now. I've clearly played myself. So with your church, one of the things that churches have been doing especially well on social lately is this new strategy that is not new. It's so tremendously simple. Simply asking questions to your congregation. So one of the questions that we've been encouraging churches to use, and so many have been to great success, is the question, hey, what's a worship song that helped you feel closer to God? One person responded and said, y'all, you cannot beat this type of engagement. So simple, no fancy graphic, real, authentic online community. I would amplify that social post and create an email campaign that simply is 100 to 200 words long, has 2 links to this direct social post, and simply says in plain text, no fancy graphics, nothing over the top, hey, John, we've been having a great discussion this week on Facebook. One of our pastors asked, what's a worship song that helps you feel closer to God? Have you seen some of the responses? Have you added your voice? We'd love to hear from you. Here's a link. Talk soon. Brady Shearer, Hope Church. P.S. We've actually created a Spotify playlist that has all the songs on it. Click here to give it a listen.
You just wrote that email off the top of your head. And the reason it was so easy, well, I mean, you've written a lot of these emails, so
that's true.
But the reason it's so easy is you didn't have to create that content. That content was already created for you. You created it on social. You asked a question, and you used the feedback to say, this content resonates with our community, and you just recycled it for email. That's what I find. I've had that own stress when it comes to email marketing. It's like, I have to create content for email? Like, what am I going to say? How am I going to say it? Well, you don't have to overthink it. Just recycle content that's performing well on another platform, whether it was something that happened on Sunday service. In this example, it's a post from Facebook. Recycle that content, just deliver it to a different audience. You don't have to come up with anything clever. It's already there for you. You just recycled it.
So that's the first idea, amplifying your best social content. The second is to amplify your most listened to sermon. Every month, you have 4.33 sermons, assuming you have church every single week. You don't need to send out every single sermon, just like you don't need to send out every single social post. But look at the metrics that you have. Look at the listens, look at the views, look at the downloads, and identify the most popular sermon from that month and then send it out. And you can use even that verbiage and say, hey, this is our most popular message this month, because that will pique people's interests. It will identify to them, oh, hey, there's a little social proof here. A lot of people are liking this one. You got to realize, as I'm sure that you do, listener or viewer, we know that not everyone in our church comes to church every single week. Maybe they're attending once every other week on average, probably once every 3 weeks, closer to at this point. So if you have a message that is being downloaded and viewed more than others, you want to make sure that you amplify that and get it to as many people in your church as possible, because if it blessed the people that were there, it's going to definitely bless the people that missed it. And frankly, if they really loved it, there's a lot of people that are going to want to re-listen to it.
Yeah, I love this strategy. I mean, obviously, because I'm a pastor, so it's my content that's going to be getting emailed out. Love that for myself. But this strategy specifically serves so many different purposes. So you hit the first one. People who weren't at church get an opportunity delivered to them to listen to a message that they missed, maybe. People who were in the room who heard that message are going to be reminded, because you know it was the most popular sermon from that month. They probably had a moment that they really enjoyed. Maybe they're going to listen again and not only glean something new, but also maybe be upon second listen, start to put some of that stuff into practice. Third, somebody is going to be reminded of that message and think, oh, you know what? My sister needs to hear that. She doesn't go to our church, but she needs to hear that. Forward that email, easiest thing ever. And also fourth, you're going to keep reminding your church where to find your sermons online so they can self-serve. A lot of people don't know how to find your church's podcast. I know that to be true from the people that I serve in my church. They're like, are our messages online? Be like, yeah, they are. Like
Apple Podcasts,
honestly, like
people.
you know the name of the church, just search it. But this is like, it's just reminding them again, like when they click through that link, they're going to land in iTunes or Google Play or wherever, and they're going to realize, oh, next time I'm away, I don't have to wait for an email. I know where to find it because they got me there. So this specific strategy serves your congregation in so many different ways.
You bring up an important point. When you're doing email correctly and you're doing it correctly in tandem with social, what happens is your email leads to better engagement on social.
Yes.
And that leads to better engagement through email. And the next email leads to better engagement and understanding of how to subscribe to the podcast or where to find the latest sermon. And now your digital strategy is working together in tandem, step by step. It's not that one is pulling away from the other, but one is pointing to this one. And so someone maybe checks their email more than Facebook, but then you link to Facebook and they're like, wow, this is a great conversation that's happening on Facebook. And because you link to Facebook and they, because it was in an email, spent like 8 minutes reading through every comment. Facebook was like, this person just spent 8 minutes listening to every comment. I'm going to make sure that they get their next Facebook post even more than last time. And it's all working together nicely.
Yes, and not for the sake of likes or downloads or anything. It's all about next steps, right? It's about people getting more connected with your church online so that when you're not in church, those other 167 hours during the week, they can still keep taking next steps in their life with Jesus connected to your church. And what do you know? It can happen through email.
I call this the hot hand approach, which is a sports term, specifically basketball.
Okay.
The Toronto Raptors.
That's why I don't know it, because basketball, I'm not as familiar with basketball.
Well, are you familiar with the Toronto Raptors?
I'm familiar with the defending champs.
Defending champs, great, yeah. World champs.
Yes.
Undeniable.
Yeah.
Undefeated.
Yes. As of today, they're undefeated.
Do you remember when they reverse swept the Bucks?
Yes.
That was really unfortunate for the Bucks.
Yeah.
Wow, MVP. Got swept out of the... Oh, that's really awkward for them.
Wow.
Anyway, the hot hand approach. Game 6 of the NBA Finals.
Okay.
Raptors up 3-2, trying to put away the dynastic Golden State Warriors. The dynasty's dead, thanks to the Raptors.
R.I.P.
Fred VanVleet killed the Golden State Warriors dynasty.
Yes.
They had to just destroy the stadium. Well, we can't even keep this stadium
We can't even
going
play another
anymore.
game here.
Okay, sorry. I'll stop. The beginning of Game 6, Kyle Lowry comes out and scores the first 11 points for the Toronto Raptors in about 3 minutes, sets the tone for the entire game. Kyle Lowry is not really a known scorer. He's more of a facilitator. He's doing the little things within the game. But he came out, he made a layup. Next possession, he takes and makes a 3. And then the next possession, he takes and makes an even more ambitious 3.
You might call that a hot hand.
Exactly. It's also called a heat check in basketball, where you're like, I keep making things.
How hot are you?
Crazy can I make this?
From the baseline? Oh, not that hot. Okay.
I mean, Steph Curry of the no longer dynasty Golden State Warriors is, perhaps the best example of this.
Yeah.
But when you're a content creator, sometimes, in fact, always, you're creating things and you always think what you're doing is good, but you never truly know how well it's going to resonate until it's actually published.
Right.
We published a strategy recently. We discussed it already in this episode. This idea of simply asking questions on social because it brings a ton of engagement. We have seen church after church after church use this content, ask these questions, and it worked for them. And that spurs on more churches to use it because it's working for those other churches. And then people are posting it in the Facebook groups and saying, wow, Brady was right.
Yeah.
Look at this. Look how awesome it is. I didn't expect that episode to go so well. I had no idea. I always think I'm creating the best that I can. Sometimes it resonates more than others. But once we identified that single, social post was blowing up, we made it into an episode.
Yes.
And once that episode was blowing up, we made that into a downloadable spreadsheet. And then we started promoting that spreadsheet on social. And we're going to start doing paid ads with it going forward because it just works so well. It's the hot hand approach. Just keep feeding him the ball.
Yeah.
Just let it fly, Kyle. Let it fly all the way to a championship.
There you go. Defending champs.
Absolutely. Do you want to talk more about that or go on to another
About
strategy?
the basketball? Maybe
Maybe
on another podcast.
Okay, another podcast. Okay. Well, there will be another time.
Yeah.
You're saying there's another time?
There'll be another time.
All right.
Only if there's a time to talk hockey, too.
Amplify your most important next step. We've talked about amplifying your best performing social content, amplify your best performing sermons, amplify your most important next step.
Yeah.
This is antithetical to what many of us are doing with our newsletters. We send out with a lot of graphics and a lot of fancy fonts.
So many graphics.
H1s, paragraph copy H2, followed by an H3.
Yeah, if you put those event graphics for every event.
Calendar event that is there, we put in an email.
Did you know that this time next year, you're going to be doing a free skate for your kids?
RSVP.
Yeah, see you there.
Because why not?
And you include that event in every email until it happens.
If you're going to talk about an in-person event or upcoming ministry happening, you want to only focus on one within a single email. This is probably the biggest takeaway for email marketing.
Yeah.
If you take away anything from this episode, it's that the Raptors... So if you take away anything from this episode, it's that you should only have a single next step within an email. Okay? Don't include one link to one event and then transition to another one, transition to another one. There just isn't enough attention within an individual's inbox to ever expect them to get to something. With our email marketing, I will use the first paragraph, which is usually only 3 or 4 lines, to talk about and introduce what I'm trying to give to Pro Church Nation. I will then link to it. I will then add a PS below that and be like, sometimes I'll just write, here's that link one more time, and then give them the link again. And then I will resend that identical email campaign 2 days later to those that did not open it the first time with a different headline, and they will get the exact same body copy within, because I am emphasizing, re-emphasizing, and then resending, and thus double emphasizing that single next step over and over again. The biggest mistake we see with email marketing, it's why it's not working in your church. One thing only in the email, Alex.
Yeah, and you'll see if you get emails from us, you'll notice you mentioned, maybe 2 links. Sometimes it's even 3 links. But what's the most important thing to note is that it's all the same link. It's phrased differently, but it's one call to action. You click through any of those links, it's going to take you to the same place. Because what's unique about email is I'm opening it, like I use the Apple Mail app. And when an email comes through with a call to action, if there's 3, 4, 5 call to actions, I can only click on one at a time. And if I click on one, what happens next? Safari opens, right? I'm on a totally different platform. The likelihood of me ever going back to that email to click on any of those other call to actions is slim to virtually none. And so you can have as many links as you want. Click here, here's that article, blah, blah, blah. But they better all link to the same place. And the more you have, the more opportunities you give people to click on that link, the higher your click-through rate is going to be. You don't want to have 10 options to click on that link, but 2, 3 opportunities to click on that link, especially in the postscript, and I think we're going to talk about that in a moment. That's key to getting people to actually taking that next step, that call to action, whatever you want them to do. Give them one way to do it.
Let's talk about ways to format your email, writing tips and tricks to make your congregation take more next steps. First is to send plain text emails. I've slandered images a couple of times already in this episode. You might think that including a fancy graphic in your email marketing would make it stand out more, seem more professional, and thus people would respond. But what types of emails do you respond to? You respond to the emails that are sent from your friends and family. And I cannot recall the last time that I had a nice, heavily formatted email come in from Alex. No, it's always like, maybe it has a salutation, but it's basically just like, no.
Yeah.
And it's really like gritty, and it's simple, and it's stripped down. You want to do the same with your emails, just plain text. I don't even bold or italicize if I don't feel like I need to. Honestly, the only time I italicize is the P.S. Because I just want it to stand out a bit more, because I know that most of the time, if you're reading an email, you skim straight to the end. Plain text, keep it simple. It'll be easier for you, and it actually leads to more engagement, which is a win.
Yeah, this one may be hard for you to let go of. It was hard for me to let go of because you can design really good-looking emails. And frankly, it feels cool when you make one. There are great platforms that can help you do it. They look awesome. But as far as not even just conversions, but conversations, those emails amount to virtually nothing. I have an email list. And I sent out a post a few months ago, and one guy that I really respect in the coffee industry, he emailed me back. He's part of my email list. And he says, hey, I really like your emails, but you're such a good photographer. It's kind of a shame that you don't include like images in your emails. And that's just because he's been conditioned to, when he gets emails from brands, there's all kinds of great imagery. But I actually get people responding to my emails because it feels like we're friends, because I'm sending them plain text emails. And that's the goal of my email marketing list. It's not just to blast information and say, here, consume this. If we could start a conversation there, that's amazing. So same thing with our church. And this is thanks to you. I wouldn't have done that because this is a little bit counterintuitive. I would not have done this if it wasn't for your advice. We're sending plain text emails, signing them from Pastor Alexander, Pastor Rick, my dad, from Rebecca if it's youth. And now when somebody gets an email from one of us, they feel like they have an open line of communication with the pastor. It's not just from a nameless face from Life Abundant Ag or the church. It's signed from Pastor Alexander, and they know that if they respond to that, they're going to get a hold of me.
Absolutely. You mentioned, and I mentioned, the PS segment in email. Perhaps you want to explain why it's so awesome?
Well, I mean, it just gets you. Like, you don't know how well this works.
I send it in every single email
until you've been got by it. So you have your email. You mentioned 3 or 4 lines introducing the content, an opportunity to click. Thanks. We'll talk soon. Brady Shearer, Pastor Alexander. P.S.
Ooh, what? Did he forget something? What? There's more. What's down there?
And it's a clever way to reiterate what you're talking about. You add that call to action one more time. Click here for that playlist that we're making. Remind them of something you've talked about. And whenever you see a PS in an email, without fail, it's like, oh, what's he talking about there? Like, what did he forget to mention? What's so important? It gets your folks' attention. And if they didn't click before, they're going to click then.
2 final quick things. The subject line is everything. We've talked a lot about the content of the email itself, but the subject line, the heading, that is what's going to determine whether or not someone actually opens the email to begin with. We did an episode on our best performing headlines of last year. It's still just as relevant today. I went through it to make sure, are all of these headlines still great? And I was inspired by myself from a year ago. And I was like, ooh,
I'm going to use that.
Brady from the past.
Yeah.
He's got better ideas than I do now. Stolen. So feel free to do that as well. We'll have that linked in the appropriate locations. And then consistency with time and day of your email also helps. So we send our emails every Tuesday at 8 a.m. Eastern and then every Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern. And every single week, unless I forget, you will get an email at those times. And that creates kind of an expectation of when our emails will come in. You can do the same thing. If you're sending emails at a ton of different times, your deliverability will likely suffer, and you won't have that chance to condition your congregation to know, oh, this is when emails come in. And with how many emails that we're getting, it's not like, John in your congregation is like, 8 a.m. on Tuesday, here comes the church email. It's not that. But if he opens an email that comes in at 8 a.m. on one Tuesday, he's that much more likely to do it on the next Tuesday and do it on the next time. Whereas if you send an email at a time that, he or she would never get that email, John or Sally, they're just not likely to, or not as likely, I should say, to respond. So consistency with time and day, again, maybe not something that you're considering, but we've found to be super helpful with our email marketing.
Yeah, you and I have a mutual pastor friend who lives on the other side of the country who does a really good job of this. Their church sends out a weekly email every Tuesday morning. I read it every week.
That's kind of weird. You have your own church.
Yeah, I don't go to his church, but I read it every week. And then when we're talking on the phone, I'd be like, hey, man, I read about that event you guys are doing this week. Like, that's awesome. And I really do think that the schedule of his emails actually,
it's habitual.
It keeps me engaged, which is a pun because his church is called Engage.
Wow.
It keeps me engaged with what they're doing, and kind of almost does set up like a bit of an expectation, like, oh, on Tuesday I get to read about what Brett's doing at his church this week. So it really is.
It's it's not on your calendar.
Right.
You're not thinking about it on Tuesday morning, but it's just a learned behavior at this point.
Yeah. I never just mark it like unread and move along. Like,
and that's impossible unless he sends it at the same time every single time.
Yeah.
And at this point, if it came in on a Wednesday evening, you'd be like,
I just archive it right away.
Unsubscribe.
Yeah, it's not Tuesday.
Report as abuse. Hopefully, these email marketing tips are helpful. If you have questions, feel free to let us know. You can send us an email or drop a line in the comments on this YouTube video. And that will do it for this episode of Pro Church Tools. We'll see you next time. Hey, thanks for watching this video. Alex is doing real work, so he's not here right now, but make sure...
No, I made it.
He made it.
Subscribe, like, and then go back to your work, because that's why I gotta go. Bye.
You heard the man.